This man knows everything to know about the San Francisco 49ers, which means we have to have him on now that Brock Purdy has finally landed. From NBC Sports Bay Area, Matt Maiocco. Good to see you, Matt. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I would have guessed 265 million for you, Rich.
Oh, is that right?
I would have been a little bit off.
I'm the Brock Purdy of celebrity guesting on the old show, The Odd Couple, for CBS. Very good. Yeah, we just played Residual Rich. So, Matt, how did the Niners and Brock Purdy land on the number they finally landed on for him?
I think it was the path of least resistance. I think that when you look at how their season was impacted last year by a holdout and a hold in and contract issues. I mean, I kind of saw the Kittle contract, the Purdy contract, and the Warner contract were all kind of intertwined, where those three guys are, the three leaders of the team. And I think any one of those three could have just tried to grind the 49ers for everything. But I think where it landed was roughly where I think everybody thought it would be. I think the $55 million per year mark was kind of, right around that area. And so CEO Jed York called Brock Purdy a top 10 quarterback, and now he's getting paid like a top 10 quarterback. I think seventh on the list now as far as average per year. So after getting paid less than $1 million a year for his first three seasons in the league, I think this was a very fair contract, and it doesn't kill the 49ers on the salary cap, and it certainly gives Brock Purdy generational wealth. So for a guy that the 49ers have kind of planted their flag and said that they expect him to be the starter for as long as John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are with the 49ers, it seemed like a good number and a fair number for both sides.
Well, also, Matt, there's the unspoken thing, too, which is, he kind of saved everyone's bacon. Normally, when you trade as much capital as you do to trade up to take a quarterback who doesn't pan out, as they did for Trey Lance, and the fact that Purdy does what he does, it kind of saved the day in many different ways. You know what I mean? And so he deserves his money even for that on top of it, Matt.
No question. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, Rich. I mean, when that trade was made to go up to number 3 overall in 2021, and the selection was Trey Lance, kind of the thought was, boy, if Trey Lance doesn't work out, if he becomes, a guy who doesn't contribute to this team, then Lynch and Shanahan might be out of a job. And what happened was that, he never really, solidified his spot as a starter. In, was it 22? He got injured. And Brock Purdy stepped in and played well. And now nobody's talking about Trey Lance and the swing and a miss as far as the 49ers there. So you're absolutely right. The number 3 overall pick did not work out for the 49ers, but the number 262 that did. And he's the guy now with the $53 million a year contract.
That said, Jed York does love Shanahan and Lynch. So we wouldn't know exactly how hot a seat would have gotten. We're just assuming that's just the way things go in the NFL, is when you do that, you take the risk and you miss on a quarterback. That usually does lead to a house cleaning. All that said, what can you say, certainly since Jed York trusts these guys, what can you say to those who think Purdy doesn't deserve this contract and that the Niners should have let him play it out and should have let him maybe go in a different direction? What do you say to those about what you know that Shanahan and Lynch think of Purdy, Matt?
I mean, I think the people who are saying that, I don't know if they watch the 49ers. I don't know if they watch much professional football, because, I mean, this is a guy that put up huge numbers in 2023, his first full year as a starter. Last year, they had all the injuries and, basically playing with a lot of guys he didn't even practice with during the offseason. I just think that Brock Purdy is one of those guys that the closer you are to him, the more impressive he looks. To see how his teammates talk about him, the coaching staff, how they talk about him. Does he have the biggest arm in the world? Of course not. But where his strengths lie are in other areas, like being able to read a defense on the fly, and knowing the offense, and being accurate and decisive, his decision making, his processing, all of those things. He's a really good player, and there's no question about it. And so when you look at the quarterback market and the salary cap, how it's rising, I just don't think that the 49ers or any team really wants to do anything that kind of undermines the leadership qualities of a quarterback. So if they try to kind of pull him around and have him twisted in the wind as far as the contract, that sends a message not only to him, but the entire locker room. That's something I think the 49ers really wanted to avoid. After last season, things were the vibes were just completely off from the off season all the way through the season. Brock Purdy played well, not as well as he did in 2023, but he still produced at a decent level, seventh in the league in QBR. So no, I just don't think that inside the building and the people who are making the decisions and the people who are around the 49ers, I don't think there was ever any question that he is the guy for the future. It's hard to find starting quarterbacks that you want in the NFL. A lot of teams are trying to find them. Teams are trying to find them every year, and the 49ers found their guy in Brock Purdy.
Matt Maiocco here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's the scoop on Aiyuk? Is Brandon Aiyuk expected to be a week one guy, looking like the Aiyuk before, or is he behind schedule? What schedule is he on right now, Matt?
They've been kind of. They haven't really disclosed what the timetable is. He had the ACL, and there's some other stuff in there, meniscus and MCL as well. So that kind of pushes back the recovery. My guess is that when the 49ers report to training camp, he'll be put on the PUP list. I would think that there's also a strong possibility he would start the season on PUP and miss at least the first 4 games. But that's, I don't think they want to rush it with him and force him back out there. Then the question is, how long will it take him to get up to speed and get back to that form that he showed in 2023? So I would think that right now, when the season starts, the 49ers are thinking that they won't have Brandon Aiyuk on the field early on, but we'll see it. A lot of it will have to do with just what happens now. I know he's at the facility working out every day, so he's on a good track from that standpoint, but I would think that he's going to miss some time at the beginning of the year.
Interesting. Okay. And defensively, just the fact that Saleh's back as the DC, that's got to raise some boats and some hopes, right, in Santa Clara? Matt?
Absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. And, there are a lot of guys that they lost on the defensive side of the ball at the start of free agency. And, Robert Saleh was the guy they brought in, paid him a good chunk of change. And then it became kind of the Robert Saleh draft. The first 5 guys that they took were all defensive players. So there's going to be some new faces on that defense at pretty much every level. A remade defensive line with basically Nick Bosa being the only holdover. So Robert Saleh and that staff will have a challenge as far as getting those young guys up to speed and seeing if that defense can return to what it was prior to last season.
So I guess what we're just assuming, I don't know, assuming is the wrong word. Let me start again. So the idea, I imagine, there for the Niners, Matt, is McCaffrey's not going to have any issues in training camp, right? He's going to come in healthy. Aiyuk's going to return healthy at some point, right? Ricky Pearsall, I'm not being glib about it, won't get shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he won't have any setbacks there. Saleh will coach up the defense. A lot of bold-faced, names are gone. Trent Williams will be there. There aren't any holdouts. Guys are signed. It's going to be more peaceful and, for the lack of a better way, normal. And that alone will have the Niners in a better position this year than last. Is that the general sense there, Matt?
It is. I mean, and a lot of those things you said, kind of takes a leap of faith to think that, those older guys can remain on the field and get healthy and stay healthy. But if you look at the nucleus of the team, man, they still have star power. They still have star power at basically every position group. So That's the thought process. I know that the questions early on in the offseason were, is this a rebuild? Are they tearing it down? What are they doing? They haven't re-signed any of their own guys. They haven't gotten out in free agency and made any big strikes there. But when you look at it, they still have Purdy. They still have McCaffrey, Kittle, Trent Williams, Brandon Aiyuk at some point, Bosa, Warner, and, some pretty good players in the defensive backfield too, probably led by Diamador Lenore. So there is still talent on the team. But when you look at it, it's, they had the oldest team in the NFL last year. They'll be a little bit younger this year with all those rookies coming in. But a lot of pieces are going to have to align for this team to get back up there and be a challenger in the NFC.
So I guess last one for you here is what other pieces of business are there for the Niners? Have they checked all the boxes, Matt? Have they done it?
Pretty much.
Okay.
If you look ahead a year, Juwan Jennings is scheduled for unrestricted free agency after this upcoming season.
Mm-hmm.
So that's somebody that they could look to keep an eye on and keep him around and maybe give him an extension. But with that wide receiver market and the year he had last year, that might be difficult to do. But I'd say right now, where they are in the salary cap, where they are with their roster, maybe a few pieces here and there, but I don't see that they have a whole lot to do between now and when the season begins.
How about that? So they can just roll the footballs out and start practicing, and guys will be there. There's no conversations about when you're going to sign this guy. I mean, It's completely different from last year, and hopefully everybody remains healthy. I guess last one for you. What is your sense of why there is Purdy doubt? And I'd love, you're right there. I mean, you must hear the conversations nonstop, but what's your 2 cents on that, Matt?
You know what? It's a great question. And I think it goes back to where he was drafted. I think a lot of people look at the draft as just being a very black and white thing as far as, the best players are chosen first, the worst players are the last guys. So I think there's just a lot of skepticism to see that a quarterback of all positions can be selected with the final pick in the draft at number 262 and then become a legitimate player in the league. So I think it just really goes back to the pre-draft process and where he was selected. And if 32 teams passed on him at least, 6 times, including the 49ers, the 49ers get a lot of credit for this great draft pick. Well, if they thought he was that good, they wouldn't have waited until 262. So I just think it's, he's just unassuming. He looks, he throws his backpack on and comes into the facility. It looks like he's, going to geometry class or something. So I think all those things, just the way he looks, he's unassuming, where he was drafted, he looks just like a regular dude. And I think people want to see a quarterback who stands, 6'5", and, they want to see, I guess, Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, and he doesn't look like that. He just produces.
Yeah, I guess he's going to finance class now, right, Matt?
He is. He is.
Is there any conversation behind the scenes about his demeanor changing, more ownership? Now he's been paid. He's now a paid guy, and this is clearly his team, and the team has clearly put their thumb on the scale by putting all that cash on the scale. Any conversation behind the scenes of him already having a different sense about himself, Matt?
100%. Yes. From what I understand, his voice is being heard a lot more in that facility. Through the negotiating part of this, he was still, he came to the offseason program. He was there day one. And I think he has all indications are inside the locker room and setting the tone with the young guys that he is speaking up more and he's being more of a leader. And that's kind of the license the 49ers gave him with that contract, is that now it's your team, no questions. There's Mac Jones isn't going to be taking your job like some people, I think, opined when they first signed him. It's his team, and now he can really kind of put his stamp on this team and become a leader. Even more than he had been.
I got to tell you, when I saw Mac Jones sign there, Matt, I just thought that this is just, he wants to be in the Sam Darnold position. Like, rehabilitate me, show me what you know, let me now go somewhere else and go kill it. It's sort of like for the lack of a phrase, like the Ohio State quarterback room. You know what I mean? Like the person who's number 2 winds up going somewhere else, whether it's Burrow or Quinn Ewers or, Kyle McCord. You go to a spot that teaches how to play quarterback, and it looks like the Niners are that version in the NFL right now,
Yeah, no, I think it is. It is a place to be, and there are a lot of backup quarterbacks kind of sprinkled around the NFL who have been in that building, and as you mentioned, a significant starter as well.
Yeah, and you're going to see Darnold twice a year now in the NFC West. Fun stuff, Matt. Thanks for the time. I mean, it's all quiet for you. What are you going to talk about over the next few weeks, man?
Oh, I don't know. Well, OTAs this week. All right. OTAs the next. So first time to see them on the field a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's better than keeping track of who's in camp and is that guy a holdout? Is he a hold in? What's going on? So it's back to football.
That's great.
That's where the programs want it.
And I'm sure that it'll benefit them. And Saleh being back too. I love that guy. Take care, Matt. You be well.
All right, Rich. Thanks so much.
You got it. That's Matt Maiocco, everybody, from the NBC Sports Bay Area 49ers beat. Always interesting to pick his brain on a team that's always fascinating. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.